Okay, so we're going to be doing some trimming today, and that involves taking this kind of yucky bit on the bottom of your pot and trimming it so that it's nicely finished and sits nicely flat on the table, and it takes all of the flange that you didn't get cut off and makes it nice and neat. So what you're going to need is you need your sponge. You're going to need a couple of loop tools. These are your loop tools. There's your flat one, and there's a loop tool with a square edge, and on the other side is a rounded edge for making textures. So you also need a little lump of clay, and you'll separate that into 3 kind of equal sized lumps that you'll use to stabilize this pot on the wheel. And this clay needs to be sort of plastic. You don't want it to be sticky, but you don't want it to be hard either, because it's going to hold the clay on the wheel. So you're going to start by taking a little bit of water in your sponge and dampening the wheel, okay, just like you would to put your pot on to center. You're going to take a little bit of water in your sponge and dampen the lip of your pot, okay? Then, using the concentric circles on my wheel head, I'm going to place my pot upside down and give it a little bit of a jiggle, trying to get it as close to the center as I can. Then, I'm going to use my finger and my foot on the wheel to center this pot, and as it comes closer to my finger, I can see where I need to stop it and push it forward. Try to get it as close to centered as I possibly can. And you just kind of hold your finger there, and you see when it comes close, stop and give it a little push, leave it a little nudge. So I would do that back here so I can really see. Once it's completely centered, you can see on the video there, my finger, it's not going back and forth like this. I can touch the side and it's not wobbling anymore. Then I'm going to take my 3 little pieces of clay and attach these to the wheel head. Okay, so I'm just pushing them in, trying not to push my pot off center as I do that to stabilize that. Now that's centered and it's attached to the wheel head. You have to be a little bit careful that you don't push it off center and that you don't warp your pot as you do this. So this tool here has a little blade on both sides that you can run along the side of your cup to take off that flange. Always keep kind of a finger here on the top and run that along the side. And it's going to take off these beautiful little ribbons of clay. I love trimming because it's really the only clean part of the pottery process. I can take the tool, the flat part of this tool there, and set it on from the middle to 3 o'clock and just set it on there and let it flatten out the bottom. So we have a nice smooth bottom. I can cut into the side and take off any of that ugly bit, and we're just cleaning it up. Now you don't generally want to go too far down on your cup. A little bit on the top, a little bit on the side, and then I always like to put your tool at an angle and take off that sharp corner just a little bit, because when you set a pot down on the table, if it has a really sharp corner, it will sometimes chip. I'll run my finger along that, and then that piece, you can just peel these off. Take that off the wheel head, readjust back to round. Take a little bit, readjust back to round, and that pot is ready for a handle, and it's nicely trimmed. Okay, so and then I would sit this on its rim like this to help keep the rim round. We'll dry it a little bit like that because the top is a little bit more, it's a little bit thicker. So a pot like this on the wheel, I took my wooden knife and I angled it a little bit before I took it off the wheel and feeling it on the bottom, I can feel that I only have about that much thickness at the bottom. And I finished this off really nicely before I took it off the wheel. So really all I have to do is run my finger along the edge, take the sharpness off of that, and it's ready for a handle as well. And I'll dry that upside down. This pot, okay, I'm going to attach that to the wheel and center it, and I'm going to give it a little bit of a decorative lip. So something a little bit more like this. You can do a little bit of decoration there, and you can cut it in a little bit more. So the first thing you need to do if you're going to do something like that is put one hand inside and one hand outside and feel how much room you have there. So I've got about that much clay to work with, so I can't go down very deep. So I'll get this pot centered. Centered. Take my 3 pieces. Attach them to the wheel head. 3 is more stable than 4 or 2, and so that's why we use 3. A taller pot would need bigger lugs to hold it on, but we push it into the wheel head so that it doesn't come off. So the first thing I'm going to do is take off the messy bits. Flatten out the bottom. Okay, so now it's nice and clean, but I'm going to give this a little bit more with this little ribbon tool here. Okay, so by placing that on the side, like so, I can dig in a little bit. And then I can put it at an angle there. Dig out a little bit of a lip. You can take off as much or as little as you want. And these little trimming bits. So I'm making sort of a little groove, a sort of a little catch, a glaze catch, because if I put a kind of a drippy glaze there, this little indentation, and I'm going to round that out so it's a little bit rounded. Okay, so I can take as much or as little as I want. And I can use my larger flat tool to flatten everything out. Okay, you can use once you have this on there, you can use this tool to add decorative effects too if you want. You can make some ridges that will catch glazes. As much or as little as you want. Okay, so that's nice flat bottom. I'm going to show you how to do a recessed bottom in the next one, and then I'll show you how to do a these little bits will dry out. Now I will sponge my lip, readjust that, and set that to dry like that. Okay, this guy here, there's a lot of clay on the bottom of this. The bottom of the cup only comes to about here, and so there's quite a bit of clay at the bottom, and it's quite heavy at the bottom. So I'm going to cut it in quite a bit, and I'm also going to recess that to take some of the weight off of the cup. Okay. So wet my wheel head. Wet the rim of my cup. Using the concentric circles on the wheel, I'll try to get it as centered as I can. It creates, wiggling it a bit, creates a little bit of suction between your cup and that is mostly centered. Okay, so then I will take my lugs, 1, 2, 3, attach those firmly to the wheel head. This is so that the pot doesn't fly off, obviously. And if you don't have it quite attached, then it definitely will. So now I can test and see, you know, if I think I'm going too deep, you can sort of usually feel by tapping it, you can hear, or you can feel it kind of going up and down. You want to make sure that you know how thick your base is, how much clay you have to work with there, so that when you're trimming, especially when you're trimming down quite a bit, that you don't trim all the way through. Okay, so we're gonna take off the clay on the excess on the sides and just kind of trim this up. Flatten that out. Okay, so next thing I'm going to do is use my small tool, and I know how much clay I've got there. I've got quite a bit of clay to work with there, so I'm going to cut this in quite a bit. This is sort of a vase bottom. So I'm taking quite a bit of clay off of this one. And I know how much clay I have there. Now when you are trimming, you want to make sure that your clay, you see how the ribbons of this clay are coming off and just flying away? They're not sticky anymore. So I've waited the appropriate amount of time until my clay was the right, it's almost leather hard. And if you don't wait for it to be leather hard, then these little bits, they get really sticky and it makes trimming really difficult. Okay, so now I've created this foot. Okay, and an indentation there. And I can make that foot round or I can make it flat, whatever I want. Now I'm going to recess. Okay, so I'm going to use the corner of my tool to draw a circle. Okay, so you can see that circle there. And then I will use the flat part of my tool to just start digging it out. And that's creating the recess. Okay, and I'll check every once in a while just to make sure I'm not going too deep. Making sure I don't go all the way through. This is great for coffee cups because the less surface area that sits on the countertop, the less the heat from your coffee is going to be transferred to the table. So the only part that actually touches the table is this little ring, and that makes it retain heat more if you're drinking tea or coffee from your mug. Okay. So now I've got quite a sharp corner, so I will take that corner off, round it out just a tiny bit. Got a bit of a sharp corner in there, so I'll round that off a little bit, flatten this out, and we've got a foot on our cup. It's a great way to take a little bit of extra weight off the bottom of your cup. And that's a flat, but you could always make it round and you can add some extra little details there if you want to. Okay? And we take the lugs off. And we have a recessed foot that will now sit really nicely kind of up off the table. And readjust my rim. Let it dry upside down, and these are ready for handles. And that's trimming.